thoughts that you've put on my heart be the right words for these your people. One magnificent moonlit night, a fisherman climbed the wall of a private estate to fish in the bounty of its fish-stocked pond. He moved with stealth, and upon reaching the banks of the pond, observed with keen awareness that there was no activity in the bungalow below. All the lights were out. With a sense of confidence, he envisioned his fishing needs taken care of for the full week. So he cast his net into the pond, making a very light splash. The master of the house remarked to his wife from his deep stupor, "Did you hear a sound outside?" And the wife remarked, "My dear, it sounded like a net falling into the water."
Yeah.
In seconds, the owner sprang out of his sleep and, visualizing his pond completely devoid of fish, yelled, "Thief! Thief!" The servants of the house, hearing their master yell, scrambled outside toward the pond. The fisherman gathered up his net as swiftly as he had tossed it into the water and scrambled to find a safe place to hide. The workers' voices were near, and in his desperation, the fisherman knew he would not escape. His eyes caught a glimpse of a smoldering fire, and he had a thought. He gathered some of the ash, rubbed it on his arms and his body and his face, and he sat under the nearest tree in a posture of one in deep meditation. When the servants arrived at the scene and saw the man in meditation, they asked for forgiveness and continued their search. Finally, they reported back to the owner, telling him that there was only a San Yazid, a holy man, in the garden. The owner's face lit up, and he asked to be taken to the site of the San Yazid. Upon seeing him, he was overjoyed and demanded that the holy man not be disturbed. The fisherman's fear turned to joy, and then to pride, thinking how smart he was to outwit the entire household. So he sat under the tree until the beginnings of dawn began to sweep across the night sky. And as he was preparing to leave, he saw a small procession of people approaching. They'd heard of the holy man. Now he couldn't leave under any circumstances. The people had come from a neighboring village with total devotion and brought offerings of food, fruit, silver, and gold to invoke the blessings of this new holy man. At this very moment, the fisherman realized that if by assuming the role of a holy man, he had received so much respect and goodwill, how much more respect and goodwill would be received if he really was a holy man. So the fisherman, who was a thief, turned in his net and became a true man of God. Now, this story might have happened by accident, but that fisherman experienced a conversion in his life. He was transformed from a thief into a holy man through the actions of others. The love, respect, and deference demonstrated toward him changed his heart. He recognized that he'd been deluding himself to think that others might respect him for his wealth. But he came to realize that he would be held in high esteem by demonstrating kindness and those qualities that label people as holy. In a similar way, on this Sunday of Transfiguration, we recall how Jesus was transformed in external appearance before Peter, James, and John. And we seek to be transformed ourselves. We must see our need to be converted into persons of Christ. We need to change our lives and conform them more to the one whom we follow and the one we seek to serve, and through our service, serve others. In Exodus, Moses came down from Mount Sinai after a second meeting with God and getting a second set of the Ten Commandments. The skin of his face glows. Now, in the ancient Near East, divine figures were often thought of as having luminous faces. And Moses' shining face frightens Aaron and the Israelites. Maybe they thought he had become God. So Moses uses his veil to cover his face when he's not instructing the people. But the people are afraid. They believe that no one sees the divine and lives to talk about it. They may have been reminded of their own inadequacies by the brightness of Moses' face. Recall that this is his second trip down from the mountain. The first time when he came down, they were worshiping the golden calf. Perhaps it was the memory of that sin that caused them to turn away from Moses. God is fine with people gazing upon his glory. But most of the time, the people aren't looking for it. After sharing the law with them, Moses veils his face. And the only time he takes the veil off is when he goes back into God's presence to speak to the Lord. It's a shame for the Israelite people, because they were missing an opportunity to be changed by the Lord's glory, which was shining through the brightness of Moses' unveiled face. They're afraid. And no one wants to get close enough to Moses because they're concerned that God's glory, which is reflected in the brightness of his face, might change them without when they least expect it. So if we turn to Luke's Gospel, in chapter 9, verses 28 through 36, Jesus is transfigured in the same manner as Moses was in front of Peter, James, and John. And in response, Peter says, "Master, it's good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." The disciples had witnessed Jesus' transfiguration and seen him talking with Moses, who represents the law, and Elijah, who represents the prophets. Peter is the only one who's brave enough to speak. And it seems like he wants to freeze that moment in time, to take a picture of it, to hold it in his hand. But a voice from heaven interrupts them. "This is my son, the chosen one. Listen to him." Just as Moses brought the law to the ancient Israelites so that God could be heard and heeded, Jesus' transfiguration has implications for those who witness it. Peter, James, and John have seen the light of God's glory shining through their master, and they heard that voice from above, pronouncing Jesus as the Son of God. The disciples have been given a glimpse of God's presence through the transfiguration of his Son. What they've seen and heard will change their lives if they're brave enough to let it happen. You simply can't see something like that and cannot be effective. The disciples know they have seen something remarkable, something transformative, something that will lead them to change. Now in 2 Corinthians, Paul is speaking about Jesus, the Son of God, who has removed the veil that Moses wore to protect the Israelites from the bright light of God's presence. Through Jesus' removing of the veil, there is no reason for the Corinthians to fear the light. Instead, they should embrace it and allow Jesus, the transfigured Jesus, to change their lives. Paul writes that once they embrace the light, they'll be changed. And the light will shine through them as if they were looking in a mirror. You see, Jesus is on a journey to Jerusalem and the cross, where the world will be changed for all time. Peter and James and John have been given a glimpse of that journey and see that Jesus is Lord and will lead them to that change by bringing the light of God's presence to anyone who believes in him. Okay, they're frightened and they're not sure what to do. But they've been in the presence of Jesus Christ, who's there to love them and teach them as they travel down this difficult road. If only they will be willing and brave enough to allow the light of God's presence to advance through them to the rest of the world. Because of Jesus Christ's life, sacrifice on the cross, and resurrection, the light of God's presence came into the world for all people to see. We don't have to be on a mountaintop or a lake shore to find God. With Jesus, God came down from the mountain and out of the temple to be in the presence of the people. Now the world has changed because God was revealed to any who would let Christ and God's light come in. Such change means transformation. It's the transformation we seek as we journey through Lent and the weeks ahead, looking for the light of God's presence in our lives. Embrace the possibilities that transformation brings, and let God's light shine out through you, reflecting as if it were a mirror, as if you were a mirror that allows the rest of the world to see that light which it so desperately needs.